have been programmed on a school calendar should be implemented. And one of those activities where we want to put a lot of focus is scouting and Girl Guides. This is because of the important role these activities play in modeling our children into the kind of citizens that this country desires. Citizens with the right character, the moral character, discipline, those who work as a team, and those who are very innovative and practical in whatever they do. This is what we saw these learners exhibiting here, and we would like to promote this in each and every school in this city. And we want to assure the public that effective next year, any school that does not participate, we will take the head teacher to court. We are blessed to have a city court, and we would like to start taking the head teachers to answer before the court why they are not exposing the children of this country to a variety of learning activities so as to bring out a whole child.
One observation before we actually when learners were here, we saw them intermixing. We see a student of Mbachi freely interacting with that of Balabu. What message would you have for those schools who are looking at this activity as a waste of time?
You see, they have really made our learners to miss a lot. Because one of the national aims of education is to promote national unity. And these activities are meant to make sure that the national unity we are talking about should not be theoretical, it should be practical. And I'm glad when I was interacting with them here, all of them agreed that they were able to learn how they can interrelate with one another. And this is what education is about, is to help the children of this country to make sure that regardless of where your origin, every corner of this country should make you feel at home. Every institution should make a learner feel at home.
For those schools who are yet to also embrace these activities and those others who are still looking at it as a waste of time, we are saying the city court, which is also yet to get operational, may be able to solely have you in there, and where we may see you solely being remanded, which may really be so embarrassing in there, or one that may also make you lose your job in there. It would also not be quite well for us to see that, but we are not praying for that. We are saying come next year, as schools, we must make sure that we give these learners the opportunities by registering them to solely be part of these activities in there, because we are able to see a number of learners also really having a wonderful time amongst themselves here. And what really matters is the relationship that these learners are going to create amongst themselves, because they are not also really first of all separated and discriminated. You will be able to see a student of a secondary and that of also really Ombachi really also really having that kind of relationship. And I was able to see those of Apescu and Ombachi also really relating well and chanting, "We are one." And that is actually the spirit which the schools also needed to implant amongst the learners in there, such that we would avoid what we call the riots and the strikes solely in the schools in there, and secondly the inter-school also conflicts in there, which we have often seen more so during ball games also really being stopped in there. And I really believe this would actually be the magic bullet. And how do we make sure this does not go on? Then such activities is actually the way to go. And besides the scouting activities, we also have the Girl Guides activities also there, plus also patriotism also which are also being trained and also being taught the learners to date. And that is also really something which the government of Uganda is actually thinking of how to model the learners. And that is where I want to say the parents also need to also have the chance and talk to the learners about career guidance. And actually one way they would also get that done is actually through what we call the scouting activities. But for now, let's have this short commercial break, and when we bounce back, we shall still be continuing the conversation from there. My name is Walish Majid. Stay tuned as we get back to you shortly.
West Nile TV, lighting up the region.
Cameras, check. Lights, check. Sound, check. Judges, check. Action. Get ready for the Miss Uganda Grand Finale live at 8 p.m. on 3rd August 2024. 28 finalists in boot camp. One crown. Who will be the next Miss Uganda? Follow the beautiful journey to the final on Makula Chika exclusively on Star Times every Friday and Saturday at 8 p.m.
Sponsored by VNA, LMZ, Comform, Nigerian Hotel, Kira Motors, Sheraton, Uganda Airlines, and lead sponsors, Grass Textiles and U-Home.
Miss Uganda 2024. True Ugandan beauty.
West Nile TV, lighting up the region.
Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome back from wherever you are watching us from. In case you are just joining us, in a similar way, I still want to say you are most welcome to the KOKOLIRIKOLIVE show that starts your ways every Mondays to Fridays. That is from the hour of 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and after 9 o'clock, that's when the news bulletin Liberty will be coming through. And today, and also in the coming days, we are going to be introducing yet another special program that will also be coming immediately after the news bulletin. That is where I also want to tell you, the viewer, to also keep it in the know and also keep waiting, because the program that also is likely to also come, that is after the news bulletin, is actually which would also be our favorite program in there. And that is why we are saying you must now be waiting, because the team is actually ready and cooking something very, very much interesting for those who love entertainment. And that's where we are saying just keep it locked. That is West Nile TV, and that program will be coming through your way in there. And that is where we also do not want to limit the discussion. Earlier on, we are talking about what we call the inter-schools scouts competitions, which did climax, and that is where we are saying the schools are still, as a reminder, must keep the learners waiting, and also must keep the learners participating in these activities, because these activities are part of what we call the co-curricular activities. And that is where we have the docket of education as Ministry of Education and Sports. And when we start limiting students from participating in what we call these co-curricular activities, which are under sports, and then definitely it is quite wrong. And now let's leave that discussion aside. Let's jet in somewhere And over the weekend, one of those big stories actually that happened over the weekend, that was on Saturday, is the attempted shooting that's also to end the life of former American President Donald Trump in there. And that's something we did see happening in one of those rallies in Pennsylvania as days just before to his nomination for the third time. And that's one thing we did see happening in there, where he was shot in the ear, which was really something, I must say, which must be condemned in the strongest terms. But what exactly happened? Because we thought this country that we have often admired in terms of democracy, in terms of everything, so really, when such a thing happens from those times, then definitely that is something which we must condemn in there. And former American President Donald Trump was a target of a apparent assassination attempt. That was on Saturday. That is already at a Pennsylvania rally, days before he was to accept the Republican nomination for the third time, and a barrage of gunfire set off panic, and a bloody Trump, who was also really said to have been shot in the ear, was surrounded by what we call Secret Service and hurried to his SUVs as he pumped his fist. That is the show of defiance in there. And Trump's campaign said the perspective of GOP nominee was doing fine after the shooting, and also which he said pierced that is the upper part of his ear in there. And that is one thing we did see happening in there. The FBI early Sunday identified the shooter as Thomas Matthew Crooks, a 20-year-old that's of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. The agency said the investigation remains active and ongoing. That is also to find out what exactly went in there and who was behind this attempted assassination. Because this young man was 20 years, we also need to understand, we also need to find out what exactly pushed him into wanting to solely end the life of this American president. And Secret Services agents fatally shot Crooks, who was also attacked from an elevated position outside the rally venue at a farm also show in Butler, Pennsylvania. And this is also according to information from also the agency in there. And one attendee was killed, and two suspected spectators were critically injured. Authorities also already confirmed that in, and we are all identified as men in there, because no lady also already had those attacks in there. An attack was also the most serious attempt, that is to assassinate and also end the life of president and also former president and presidential candidate, since that's also already Ronald Reagan was shot in 1981 here. Because this also really shows that now that this is not the very first time we are seeing also really somebody being also attempted shooting in there, because we also had American president, that's also Ronald Reagan, who was shot, that's way back in 1981 in there. And could also be alter the tenor and security posture of the Republican National Convention, which will begin on Monday, that's in Milwaukee. And organizers say the convention will also proceed as planned. And Trump flew, that's also to New Jersey, also after visiting a local Pennsylvania hospital, landing also shortly after midnight in Newark, also Liberty International Airport. And video posted by an aide showed former president also deplaning also his private jet, flanked by U.S. Secret Service agents, and heavily also armed also members of the agency's counter-assault team, and use also visible show of force by protective detail. And that's something we did see happening in there. But really, what was the motive of this young man who wanted to end the life of the presidential candidate in there? Because when we look at also the American president, that's also something that we must say is not quite easy. And for you to just think that you want to end the life of such a man just like that, then that is quite unfortunate, and I really want to condemn that in the strongest terms. And we also need to also talk to young people really of certain issues that also really which they may also really want to engage themselves in there, because that is really quite unfortunate for us to also really see and also talk about, because that is where we did see that happening. But really it happened, and we also really have to condemn that in the strongest terms in here. Now let's leave that aside. Let's jet into within Uganda, because this was the biggest story over the weekend on Saturday, which also left many people asking themselves, why did these people want to end his life? And what is the motive? And what is the reason behind that? Definitely, I do not know. And the Americans already who were behind this also already intended, also already attempted to end somebody's life, also already definitely know why they want to do so. And that is where we want to leave the discussion aside. Now let's jet in within Uganda, where also so many stories also continue to happen over the weekend, because once we return back from the weekend, usually we get to also realize that so many stories could have happened over the weekend, but really we give you those summaries also really here on the pod this morning. And remember, over the weekend we also did see so many stories happening, where two mechanics already were killed in massacre as lorry tire also already explodes in there. And that is another story that we did see happening over the weekend. And this is where we also want to tell our mechanic brothers to be very much careful as they are doing their work in there, because sometimes these tires may also have tubes, which I should say can be worn out, but really as they are doing their works, they must make sure that also they have this consideration, because this is not the very first time we are seeing a tire also really exploding. First of all, also hitting somebody to death, because this is not the very first time we have seen these cases also really emerging across the country. But we are saying these cases must now be avoided by also vigilance, where the mechanics also really must, first of all, give keen attention as they are doing their work, so that also really nobody is left out as they are doing their work in there. And that is one thing also really I feel we need to also really keep the brothers who are more so in doing that work also remind, because if at all we're not going to be reminding them, then definitely that would be quite unfortunate. And at the end of the day, we may also lose their lives, which may not be right. And that is one thing also we did see happening in there. And really, I want to say to those who are into mechanics business, we must make sure that we are doing this work with a lot of vigilance and a lot of also concern and a lot of care also in there, because at the end of the day, that would also really be very much bad in there. And the tragedy also happened, that's in Chiwabumbi, a suburb in Masaka City, when a lorry tire burst and also claimed the lives of 2 mechanics. And this happened on Sunday morning, and the victims identified as Norman Aboki, who is a 39-year-old, and also Timothy Damlira, a 15-year-old, both residents of Kibonjweni, that's in Kimanyaka, Bonera, also municipality, were fatally injured. That's solely in the incident which occurred around 9 a.m. And this incident happened, by the way, in the area of, that's Abed Bwanika in there, and this is also where he leads as the area MP. And we did see also that incident happen where eyewitness recounted that explosion happened, that is as one of the deceased was using a metal tool, that is to fix also really a spare tire rim at a local garage in there. And that is one thing also we want to call upon the young people also to give some care as they are doing their work in there. And Aboki, the owner of the garage, was reportedly instructing the young man, that's Damlira, on the repair work at the time in there. And according to Rita Nacheune, another resident also already, the noise initially also led many to fear it was a bomb blast. And she noted also that the mechanics had been advised to release the tire pressure before repair in there, but a precaution they apparently ignored. And that's why we're saying, as the mechanics, we need to give keen interest. We need not mind about money, but sometimes we also get to know that the mechanics are very much into so much into money, where they think of doing the work faster and also to get the money faster in there. But we are saying that shouldn't be the case, and that shouldn't also be one thing that may end your life in there. And residents expressed shock at the incident, and also really describing both victims as respected members of the community, with no cases of also indiscipline in there. And that's what we did see happening. Mr. Richard Kaule, a resident, called for what we call a police investigation, particularly focusing on circumstances surrounding also the incident in there. And Southern Regional Police Spokesperson, we did see Mr. Toa Kasire confirming the investigations which already underway, also recalling for that's keen also interest also people to also really make sure as they're doing their work, they are not also really focusing that into money. And let's leave that aside. Still, that's also related to what we call the taxi instances on the road. Also, we did see a tragic incident happening on the road. Also, that is the Mbale Terini Road, where a taxi bound also from Mbale also really got also caught off in fire, and we did see also two people losing their lives over the weekend. And this follows also where two passengers also tragically lost their lives on Sunday evening, also really when Mbale bound taxi caught fire after departing from Jinja, also the taxi parking, and the taxi motor van registration number that's also really UBA 463V was carrying also really approximately 12 passengers caught fire near the junction that's of Cliff Road East, that is on the Iganga Road, just moments after departure in there. And we did this happen where Mr. James Okelo, an eyewitness, said the taxi passed him at about 4:45 p.m. while moving in an erratic way, with its engine also producing a sound which was really sounding very much abnormal. It means that this vehicle could have had a mechanical challenge, but these drivers and the people also insisted of reaching, because sometimes we also do understand that these drivers also have that strong feeling of wanting to drive just like that. And that's why we're saying you, the drivers, must make sure that as you're driving these vehicles, you need to give keen interest, because if you're not giving keen interest, then definitely that would be something that may end your life. But really, how do you make sure that this does not end your life is another question. So really still, we must ask yourself this early morning, because if at all you're not asking yourself, then definitely it may be one thing that may also end your life, but which may not be right, and this is also which we're not praying for. But we are saying, as you're doing your work, focus on what we call those risk measures also, because these risk measures, if you're not giving attention to them, then definitely your workplace could be also your place of death in there. And that's why we're saying we must make sure also as you're doing your work, then definitely we are giving keen attention. And we did this according to Mr. Kello. Barely 30 also seconds later, the taxi stopped and the driver alighted also from it. It's also with engulfed in flames. People tried to rescue some of the passengers, but unfortunately the 2 people died on spot. That is also, we did see what was happening in there. And Mr. Aldina Road LC1 chairman, Mr. Vine Semaganda, termed the incident also unfortunate and criticized the driver for reportedly fleeing the scene without allowing passengers also to exit, unaware also of the vehicle mechanical issues in there. And Mr. Mzamil Mugoda, a boda rider, however, leaped also the driver's defense, saying sometimes car owners also are informed about the condition of their vehicles, but they do not care, which is really right, because many of the times when you interact with these drivers, you get really, if you ask them why you are driving this DMC vehicle, they will tell you this dangerous mechanical condition vehicle is because the owner is not caring. But as owners, why do you give attention to this thing that also is bringing money to you instead of also making sure that it is in good condition? Because many of times we have seen these vehicles, more so these passenger vehicles, not only the drones, not only the taxis. What about the lorries, which are also really commonly used, that is in the region? What about the tippers? What about the fusos? How do we see them? Because they definitely sometimes we still get to see these vehicles are not in the great conditions. But really, how do we make sure that they are not continuing to also be on the road without necessarily being in there? But sometimes people also blame the other officers, that most of the traffic officers who are stakeholders in making sure that vehicles that are supposed to be on the road are actually those that deserve to also be on the road. But really sometimes it is quite unfortunate. They also do not give keen attention. They mind of the kitu kidogo as alleged. But really, how do we make sure that such issues does not go on? Because many times when we lose lives, then that's where we start regretting, had I done this, had I done that? Really, which is really quite unfortunate, and which we also really must condemn in the strongest terms in there. And we did see bystanders and police of fire brigade, led by District Police Commander Mr. Innocent Mubangizi, responding swiftly, but also the detectives are currently carrying out investigations. And Mr. Mubizi, however, declined to talk to the press and said the deceased we are taking to Jinja Regional Referral Hospital mortuary, and the other passengers also already are yet to receiving treatment in the same facility in there. And that is one thing also we must also pray for the souls of the deceased who lost their lives in there, because as you on the road, you do not know that you are going to meet your death on this road. And that's why we're saying each and every time you are on this road, you should also make sure that you pray first of all before you be on these roads, because somebody who may be errant in there, just like this driver who was driving this DMC vehicle, could be the one also to end your life. What about those who drive anyhow? We are saying all these things, we must also give keen attention to them, because as we on these roads, we're not going to be being on these roads each and every time we're on these roads, and we do not know what may come to us as we're on these roads in there. And that is why we're saying the traffic police officers must continue doing their sensitization and must continue checking the vehicles, so that's already whichever vehicle is on the road is actually one that qualifies to be on these roads. But really, on quite also sad note, sometimes people lose trust in these mechanics, and maybe also the mechanics and the other stakeholders. For instance, the traffic officers who are minding also of other issues other than focusing on what and reason brings them on the road in there. And that is one thing also we feel we shouldn't also leave out as we continue to warn you. But really, to those who got injured, we wish you quick recovery. For those who lost their lives and who lost their relatives, we say may their souls continue to rest in eternal peace in there. And we continue to also mourn with you, and we are also calling upon police and other stakeholders now to also give keen attention to what is happening on the roads in there, so that also we do not get anybody also losing their life as a result of this incident happening in there. And accidents also what we usually say are unexpected happenings, but I really believe we can also do something to make sure that the issues of accidents do not continue to go on in there. And let's leave that aside. Now let's look at the trial of Major Chigundu suspects, also which is starting today. This is also another story we are seeing on the past morning, where the trial of 8 people accused of killing Major Muhammad Chigundu and his bodyguard, also already Sergeant Stephen Mukasa, starts on Monday, which is also the 15th of July in there, with plea also already task taking at the International Crimes Division of the High Court in Kampala, sitting in Kampala, India. And the accused are Yusuf Nyanzi, Sheikh Yahya Ramadan Mwanje, Muhammad Buyondo, and also already what we call Musa Sekandi alias Masanafu, Jibril Kayongo, and also Sulay Brohan Kali, and not forgetting Nurdin Lutaya, and also already that's also already Ibrahim, also known as Ibrahim Semwanda in there, who are currently being tried. That's at the court also for the alleged murder of Major Muhammad Chigudu India. And the court also confirmed the accusation of aiding and abetting terrorism against that's Buyondo, Sendegea, Sekandi, Nyanzi, Baledusa, and Lutaya India. And that's also something we are going to be seeing them also being tried for. And the court further confirmed that the allegation of professing to belong to one terrorist organization, and that's solely against Baledusa and Lutaya India. The judge accordingly committed also accused the persons for trial before designated trial time. Also, that is something we did see happening in there. And for now, they are yet what we call suspects as the investigations into the matter continue. And we are saying this matter has taken long, and that's where these people deserve justice. If at all they are guilty, then they should also be sentenced. If at all they are innocent, then they should also be freed. But for now, they are suspects because the courts of law must prove you innocent or guilty until reasonable doubt in there. And that's according to provisions of the law. And that's where we are saying this matter has also really overstayed, and we are yet following up on that matter. And when they are freed, also when they're sent, also really remanded for being guilty, still we shall be coming here to also keep informed. And this is one thing we did see also really happening, where these people were arrested and for killing that sheikh in there, and that is one thing also really they are yet also really being investigated, and really feel we also need to leave that matter in there. And now let's leave that aside. Still related to murder suspects, the Katanga murder trial also resumes today. Is for another where court will be also talking about as the trial and hearing of a case in which Molly Katanga is accused of killing her husband, a businessman known as Henry Katanga, which is already resuming today, also on Monday 15th of July in there. That is already will be going on at the High Court, sitting in Kampala, still in there, where Molly is facing trial together with her daughters, also who are identified as Patricia Kakwanza and Martha Nkwanzi in there, as well as Georgia Manyire, a domestic worker, and Charles Otai, a nursing officer, who are accused of destroying evidence and being also an accessory after the incident of the murder in there. And that's where we are seeing them also being tried for. And the case is before Justin Mwata, Assistant Director of that's of Public Prosecutions, Samuel Wakoli, and Chief Attorney is also State Attorney is also, that is Jonathan Mugwanya, and Anna Kiza, who also behind also really prosecuting the matter in there. And that is one thing also I feel I need to remind you of. And the defense team consists of that is Peter Kabatsi, Mark Dusman Kabega, and Just Morazi, Bruce Musinguzi, and Elson Karuhanga. Meanwhile, renowned lawyer Muesigwa Rukutana is monitoring the proceedings on behalf of the deceased's family in there. And in the last court session, we did see also on July 12, 2004, prosecution witness, that's Pierre Kajura, told court also that the deceased expressed in fear, saying the phone was also she wanted to change his password, and also the day prior to his death to shake off those also trailing him in there. And that is one thing we did see happening, and I really feel also they need to keep you reminded of in there. But what lesson can we pick from these instances? We are saying taking the laws into your hands is never right, and we must also condemn murder cases in the strongest words. But really, why would you want to kill somebody with whom you are sharing that matrimonial bed and with whom you have had children? This is really quite unfortunate. And I really feel the world is going astray, and also that tells us of the hypocrisy and also really of how inhuman the world can be. Because you are telling your daughters also already being also already orphans in there, and the same daughters already have turned against you, which is already something I must say is quite unfortunate. And really, what was the reason for this murder? Was it innocently done? Was it also guiltily done? Because definitely, if at all, she also said that it was maybe innocently and also accidentally done, then she would be also charged that is for a lesser case, which would be what we call manslaughter. But for now, we are still seeing her being investigated for the murder, and I really feel it is something very, very much bad, and which we must also condemn in the strongest words in there. On the same day, Molly Katanga was admitted at the IHK, former known as International Hospital, Kampala, with also really various head injuries, and also that's something we did see happening in there. Could it be as a matter of domestic violence? Because today we are seeing domestic violence cases being very, very much high, and Arua City is actually on the verge of developing what we call the GBV ordinance in there, because of the rise in what we call the gender-based violence cases, which I really feel is something which we must also talk about. Because if at all we're not talking about them, then definitely we are going to be seeing the GBV cases also rising. And on Friday last week, we did see also the Arua City together with other leaders and organizations coming together to also really talk about the launch of what we call the GBV ordinance, which is also really being in draft for me, which I really feel is the way to go, as we are going to be seeing the operation of our city court definitely the GBV ordinance will be quite well, because today we are seeing a number of GBV cases going on. Today we are seeing women beating their husbands, which is really something which was not there, and that is still GBV. And when we talk about GBV, many of the times people think it is only men, or it's only ladies, who go through it, but we are saying GBV cuts across. We have men who are subject to GBV. We have men who are going through GBV. We have men today who are being beaten by their wives. We have men who are being mistreated by their wives today. And all that is GBV. And we must now join hands and also talk about GBV, because many times some people may be going through silently also through GBV cases in there. And that is one thing also really which we look for this week also really, where we are going to be also really joined by officials to come and brief us about the ordinance of what we call the GBV ordinance in there. And that is one thing also really we are going to be analyzing. Is it the way to go? Do you think, in your own opinion, it will be able to be addressing the matter and the issues of also the GBV cases in our society in there? Because many times we are seeing our society members also really facing what we call the GBV challenges in there, but really nothing much is being done to them. And how can we make sure that we bring them together and also really end the vice of GBV in there? Because many of the murders actually happen, that's also really unwillingly, but really as a matter of domestic violence, some small brawl here and there, somebody's life is gone. And that is where we're saying we must desist from tendencies of fighting amongst ourselves as families. And we as parents, we must also really do one thing, and leave the children out of our matters, because the children are never a part of the matters. And as children, we must also really make sure that we are not part of the fights of our parents, because many times this has already left to a lot of atrocities, a lot of injuries in the families, and which would I really feel may not be right, because many times we have seen this happening. And how do we make sure that this does not go on? We are saying as children, if your mother is having a problem with your father, that is their war. You must make sure that you are not part of that in there. And for now, that brings us to the end of the first hour as we run for yet this short commercial break, and we bounce back shortly.
West Nile TV, lighting up the region.
Cameras, check. Lights, check. Sound, check. Judges, check. Action. Get ready for the Miss Uganda Grand Finale live at 8 p.m. on 3rd August 2024. 28 finalists in boot camp. One crown. Who will be the next Miss Uganda? Follow the beautiful journey to the final on Makula Chika, exclusively on Star Times every Friday and Saturday at 8 p.m.
Sponsored by VNA, LMZ, Comfort, Nigerian Hotel, Kira Motors, Sheraton, Uganda Airlines, and lead sponsors, Grace Textiles and You Home.
Miss Uganda 2024. True Ugandan beauty.
West Nile TV, lighting up the region.